Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending from where are you and which part of the world. This is Nicola Kopizanin speaking from Solar Plaza. I'm the project manager, and today we're going to speak about trends and opportunities for solar in Hungary, and we are streaming live from Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Today, joining are Joseph Moses, Managing Director of Photon Energy, and Georg Hotar, CEO and co-founder of Photon Energy. So let's begin. Hopefully it's going to be a very interesting webinar, lots of topics to touch. I'm going to guide you quickly through what's the agenda of today. Very quick introduction of what we're doing in Hungary and what's the Hungarian market. And then let's begin with the content and the presentation, leaving the stage to George and to Joseph later. And of course, as always, Q&A session. So please feel free to ask. We have people that are very prepared today, great speakers. So feel free, don't be afraid, save those questions in. We will pose them and we will redirect them to our speakers. And that leaves us to the end of the webinar. So just quickly for our first time listeners about Solar Plaza, for those who haven't heard of us, our mission is to positively impact the world by accelerating the sustainable energy transition. We do that mainly through high quality and high networking opportunity events and conferences all around the world. We've been doing it now for 15 years, as I mentioned, based in Rotterdam, more than 125 events in 35 countries, or as we like to say that, from Chile to China. And we actually have been connecting more than 60K professionals from the PV industry over the last 15 years. So that's, I think, it's a very, very great result, and always continuing to do that. Before beginning on to touching onto the Hungarian topic, I just want to quickly talk to you about the Solar Future in Hungary event we are launching. Since it's a very big market and we want to do this first time event, it's a one-day event. However, we are launching a pre-conference dinner on November the 13th in a beautiful venue for those who know in Budapest, New York Palace Cafe. So register, be there, because it's a great networking opportunity, many professionals. And that leads us to our event on the 14th of November in Corinthia Hotel, Budapest, from 9 to 5, lunch, tea, coffee breaks, networking session, drinks. So visit our website and join. But let's get directly into the content of today. And just before that, some practical details. If you have technical issues, can hear us, of course, use the chat bots, as I mentioned earlier, for questions. More than welcome. Question box there for that. And yeah, have those questions coming in. Q&A at the end, as I mentioned, and in the end, slides, as always, in the handout section there for you in order to review this webinar of today, and recordings will be posted afterwards in our YouTube channel also. I'm going to now leave the stage to George. As I mentioned, George is CEO and co-founder of Photon Energy back in 2008, more than 10 years active now in the market. Before that, he ran a finance advisory boutique in the CE region, so great financial experience for George, and also other positions in between London, Zurich, and Prague. So George, I will now leave you the stage, and curious to hear what's the current situation of the solar market in Hungary. Stage is all yours, George.
Okay, thank you very much for introduction. First of all, I would like to say it's a great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar, and also we're very much looking forward to the event in Budapest in November, together with Solar Plaza. So just a very few words. I'm the CEO of Photon Energy. We are a downstream integrated company covering the whole life cycle of power plants, from the development stage to the construction and then long-term operation and maintenance, with a very strong footprint in Central Europe. We originally started in the Czech Republic, where we have built about 35 megawatts with the largest O&M provider there. We have solar plants in Slovakia, and we entered the Hungarian market in late 2016. So relatively at the beginning of the very dynamic development that we have been seeing since then, and which is now accelerating So on this slide, you can see a few highlights of our company. If you want more information, you can find them on our website, photonenergy.com. So Hungary is a market that has had a support mechanism for renewables in general, so technology agnostic for about 10 years until the end of 2016, which is the system referred to as KAT. Unfortunately, I haven't learned to this day all the Hungarian words that represent KAT, but it's basically a system that was technology agnostic. So in the past, quite a lot of wind farms, biogas plants, also biomass plants have been built on the basis of the support scheme. And for a long time, the approximately 100 megawatts, so 100 euros per megawatt hour were too low. But in 2016, basically the investment costs and the financial parameters of this support scheme intersected, and a lot of developers actually asked for licenses. That means promises that if plants get connected until a certain date, they will benefit from the support for renewable energy, the parameters of which I will get to on one of the next slides. So solar started becoming one of the main areas of focus, and as you can see on the graph, the development, as usual in this situation where markets are starting initially, the curve is quite flat, and we are now getting slowly into a hockey stick shape. So in 2018, we have seen over 400 megawatts being added, which basically led to more than a doubling of the installed capacity cumulatively. And at the moment, I mean, there are certain the number of almost 2 gigawatts is a little bit of guesswork, because of course the year is not over, but there's a lot of construction activity happening in Hungary. Some projects are getting delayed for various reasons, so it will be quite difficult to pinpoint. We believe that the market should reach at least 1.5 gigawatt cumulatively of installed capacity end of this year, but it could also be a surprising an upside surprise. What is important to say is that based on the licenses issued under the 3 different support regimes, the COD dates, the final COD dates are until the end of 2021, so there will definitely be more installed on the basis of these support mechanisms. However, the market now, and the Hungarian government is now moving towards a new mechanism in line with what you're seeing across Europe and globally, and these are large-scale auctions, the first of which will take place before the end of the year. It is for a relatively small amount of electricity, but it's meant as a test case, and all the future plans for renewable energy and solar in particular in Hungary should be based on auctions. So looking at the energy mix or the approach of the Hungarian government, as probably many of you know, the Hungarian government is planning to expand the nuclear capacity by adding additional capacity in the PAK nuclear power plant, where the Orban government has signed an agreement with Rosatom in Russia. So that will, for baseload, that seems to be the main pillar they want to build their energy strategy around. But solar is basically the main renewable energy source that Hungary is betting on, with gas used for peaking and balancing. And on that basis, I think we believe that the Hungarian market has all the ingredients for continued rapid adoption of solar energy in the near future. So we see that there is a medium-term target of about 3 gigawatts, and it appears that the government is seeing a potential of 5 to 6 and probably even more gigawatts by the end of the next decade. So there's definitely a lot of additional potential, also on the back of the fact that due to its topography, there is only very limited potential for hydro, as it's a flat country. Biogas, biomass is also something that has very limited potential, and it appears that the excitement about wind is also rather muted. So government has been not very supportive in having significantly more wind capacity added. So solar seems to be the main pillar of growth. So this means that at this point in time, Hungary, looking at the CE region or Central Europe, we can see that it's currently, in terms of newly added capacity, one of the main hotspots. Its share of renewables is still very low at 11%. So this is now being, of course, increased quite dynamically. On the next slide, I will introduce to you the three different, of course, very closely correlated, but different support schemes and licenses that have been issued, and on the basis of which plants are being built at the moment and will continue being built until the end of 2021. As already mentioned, one of the main reasons why solar has significant potential is that the potential of other renewable sources is rather limited. What maybe also like to add just a little bit of flavor on the experience in developing projects in Hungary. We've been involved in some projects where we developed from scratch, but very often we teamed up with developers. And over our 10-year, 11-year history, we have been developing projects in several countries like the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Italy, Germany, also Australia, Romania. So if I have to compare the process in Hungary, leaving aside the language barrier, of course, as probably most of you know, Hungarian is a slightly uncommon language, so the language barrier is a very real one. However, so far our experience has been that the regulations have been around the permitting and also the renewable support scheme have been very transparent. The regulator has, over the last 3-4 years, after issuing the various support licenses and also extending them, because the development process took a bit longer for a lot of the market players, so they allowed twice the extension of the licenses that were initially issued for 2 years, up to 5 years from the original issuance date. So I have to say that compared to many other markets, the changes and the requirements to be able to extend those licenses have been actually very well thought through, and actually we have seen that the regulator and the government really seems to be trying to support the development of solar energy in Hungary, which from our experience has not been the case in some other markets. In general, the legal system has been quite robust. We have the development process is quite foreseeable. The only thing we've seen is that sometimes the local construction offices have different approaches in similar situations. So it's always good to work with local technical advisors and legal advisors. But we've not encountered any major roadblocks, and we've been able, in some cases with some delay, to get all our projects to the ready-to-build stage. So I would call Hungary, in terms of complexity, a medium complexity market for developing projects. What has been very beneficial is that the local banks have been very interested in financing projects, and to our great surprise, they have also shown a relatively significant preference to experienced players, experienced investors, which very often has meant that we're more interested in supporting international investors coming into Hungary that have had the track record, as opposed to local investors. So we have seen that some local investors that initially had to plan, for example, to build and own those assets themselves have had difficult times to get financing, and then sold their projects on to investors like ourselves or other international investors coming in. So far, because the projects have been, the individual project sizes have been rather small, and there were very few possibilities to really group together a large number of them for financing purposes. The majority of financing has been done at the local level, and we've seen so far limited interest by international banks, but also, for example, institutions like the EBRD. However, all of those international banks and also the EBRD, when we spoke to them, they expressed a clear interest that once the auctions will start in Hungary, they'll definitely stand ready to, and will be interested to provide project level funding. So from that we can deduct that now that the auctions have started, and obviously over the next couple of years there should be a larger number of projects being awarded contracts for difference in those auctions, the financing or the funding pool will be enlarged, and basically will consist of both local banks but also international banks and the multilaterals like the EBRD. Just a short run-up on an overview of the support schemes that have been used so far. I mean, for an investor looking at the Hungarian markets today, of course, the auctions may be a trigger, but there are still projects being built, and sometimes it's also possible to acquire projects that have been awarded support, but basically licenses guaranteeing support based on the previous system. So until the end of 2016, it was possible to obtain licenses under the KAT regime, which provided, which is basically a feed-in tariff. The size of those projects, there's a piece of information missing here, was up to 499 kilowatt AC connection capacity. So these projects are relatively small. So what has happened is that a lot of developers were developing several such projects next to each other, and as long as they were on separate plots, it was possible to do that. The support scheme was up to 25 years, and when you applied for the license, basically the applicant, when he received the license, had obtained a guaranteed total volume of supported electricity, which was basically calculated on the basis of 25 years, a supported volume of 1100 kilowatt hours per kilowatt peak, which was then multiplied by the DC capacity, which could be higher than the 499 AC capacity. And the support is the total volume in the license over a maximum of 25 years. The actual production results in Hungary are actually better than 1100. So we have seen on our power plants between 1200 and close to 1300 on fixed installations. So that means that that supported volume of electricity will be consumed or produced, and therefore then the feed-in tariff consumed over a shorter period than the 25 years. Banks are financing for up to 15 years. So those KAT licenses have been issued until 2016, end of 2016. That means there are projects in the market that have a latest COD date to qualify for the feed-in tariff until the end of 2021. One of the topics is also that it is necessary to forecast production. So that's necessary for all three types of licenses. However, in the case of the KAT licenses, If reality is within a relatively broad range from the forecast production volume, then there's a premium, and if one doesn't hit that bandwidth, then there's no penalty. After 2016, then two types of METAR licenses have been issued. Here I'd also like to point out that the KAT system in the past has not been notified to the EU. However, there's been in operation for such a long time that it's considered bankable, and there's never been a challenge by the EU Commission. However, the METAR based support system has been notified to the EU, so it's a notified scheme. So the METAR cards are also for projects up to 499 kilowatts of AC capacity, but they've been issued for a shorter period of time. In the first year for 21 years, and now it's down to, and then at the end it was 17 years. However, still the same feed-in tariff of about 100 euros per megawatt hour, paid in local currency. And there again, the licenses and the projects out there with these licenses have CODs up to 2021. Forecasting is necessary, balancing is necessary, and in case of misforecasting, then there are penalties. The green premium is basically a contract for difference. Most of the parameters are similar, except that you have to sell electricity into the market, and then you get the difference paid by the off-taker. There has been a certain mortality of the project of projects based on these licenses, so this is why at this point it's quite difficult to fully estimate what volume of projects will be realized on the back of these licenses. But these are the projects that are fueling the growth at the moment, and will do so for the next 2 years. So coming to the auctions, which is a measure that's been expected by investors for quite a long time, and from what we understand, the Hungarian government has worked with advisors, and they have tried to put in some proper thought and get I think good advice in structuring it. So the first auction will start now in November and will be concluded in December, and the final auction result will be published on the 15th of March next year. After that period, successful bidders will have 3 years for implementation. The volume that will be sought in this first round is 200 gigawatt hours per year, which, based on the specific production in Hungary, indicates around 160 to 170 megawatt peak. This 200 gigawatt hours per year represents an annual support of about 1 billion forints, which is around 3 million euros. The contract is a 15-year contract for difference, and the maximum allowed bid is 26.08 forint, which is, depending on the current exchange rate, just a little bit shy of 80 euros, so 78 euros at the current exchange rate. And it will be necessary to post bank guarantees at the application, and then also successful bidders will have to place an additional bond of equivalent to 5% of the expected capex of the plant. And just one issue that's more related to the project development, there's also a limitation to how many projects can be next to each other. So one of the measures taken to ensure that is that between different projects by the same investor, there has to be a 1 kilometer distance between connection points. And last but not least, one investor will only be allowed to put in 2 bids into this round of auctions. So I think it's important to understand this as the first round of auctions. The volume that is being sought is relatively small, with 20 gigawatt hours, and I guess that then based on the lessons learned, we may see some adjustments to the scheme at a later point.
Georg, so as you mentioned,
Yes,
this will definitely not be the ultimate turning point in the market, but surely it creates a new framework from where to evolve. And I think it's also worth mentioning that during our event, we will have a representative from the Ministry of Energy who will be able also to clarify. As from my understanding, Georg, there's not that much clearance right now. We have a framework. We'll see where it will go over the next years. It's kind of a test, but
yes,
ultimately I think that
yes.
more clarity is required, and we hope also to offer that clarity to our attendees during our event.
Absolutely, I think the attendees have been selected, and sorry, the speakers have been selected in such a way that that basically we're trying to get attendees the full picture. So we'll have speakers from the regulator, from the DSOs, and the Ministry of Energy, also some financial services providers. So to get the full picture of the Hungarian opportunity. I think one last thing I would like to say is what we've also seen starting relatively recently is actually also interest in corporate PPAs. So I think if we talk about the Hungarian market as a whole, definitely those auctions will be the drivers going forward. But there is also interest in PPA type structures from arrangements from some large corporates. So that will also be a driver in the market. And I mean, for us, we see as Photon Energy, we see Hungary as a core market for ourselves for the next couple of years, and pretty sure it will keep us very busy across all these different types of projects.
Absolutely. Thank you much, Georg. Just a reminder, that was once again Georg Hotar, CEO and co-founder of Photon Energy. Now, before we move on and leave the stage to Joseph Moses, first questions are coming in. As always, reminder, Q&A box, feel free to answer. We will take them at the end of the session. So push with the questions. And stage now, I will leave the stage to Joseph. Joseph, who, as I mentioned during the introduction, is the managing director of Photon. Needless to say, more than 50 years of experience in the field, from operation, maintenance to asset management, CEO of other private companies. So new experience now for Joseph in Photon. And Joseph, what can you tell us about O&M in Hungary? Stage is all yours.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk here, and welcome to all the audience. Thank you for the introduction. As you mentioned, I was in the last 15 years involved in maintenance and operation works in the fields of different properties, like factories, buildings, and then similar objects. I joined early this year to Photon Energy Hungary and became managing director of the operation and maintenance. My role here is to build up this department of Photon. And in this particular case, my role is to tell you some things about some major characteristics of the operation and maintenance side of the solar industry in Hungary. I would start with some, if I would have one word as a major character of this market, like as O&M is concerned, is quite undeveloped. So that and it's meant to be because of the structure of the ownerships, as Georg mentioned before. There were small units like under half a megawatt peak power plants, which was promoted by the government, and as a result, that there are some small private owners on the market, and there are some institutional international investors like Photon, like us, and there are very few bigger Hungarian local investors. So I would just mention a few major challenges that we had to face in the last year when building up the operational maintenance activities. The first was really the identifying of the existing standards and patents to comply with when provisioning our services. There were missing or existing regulations which do not explicitly correspond to solar equipment. So we had to build up a library which is frequently updated with these standards in order to regulate our own codes as well as the best practices which are tailor-made to the local legislation environment. There was a similar learning process to facilitate the company's environmental health and safety rules. Sorry, it was not me. Environmental and health and safety rules, which was a bit more obvious, but still the rules here in Hungary are generally flexible, whereas the authorities are not at all. So we need to build up an effective way to communicate with them. There is another one which is, I think, probably known by everyone who's listening to us, that Hungary was hit by the employment crisis, maybe a little bit more than the other Eastern European countries. And we see now how the surrounding governments are actually making a contest of increasing the minimum wages. For example, this is already a consequence of the dramatic increase of the salary expectations of the workers and the migration of the workers out from the country to Western European countries. So there is a strong lack of human resources, which gives us a really serious challenge when building up a team of experts, technicians, and this is true for the development, not only just for the maintenance activities. We faced a need of a significant asset management, a kind of asset management resources earlier than maybe in other countries. And the reason for this could be found in the legislative environment that is potentially changing. As Georg has highlighted, there is a constant or frequent change in the obligations and the necessary administrations. So the regulator and the government is obviously strongly supporting the solar industry, but from time to time we need to face the changes we need to be prepared to, and we need to have the proper flexibility. I could mention just the registration of utility maps. There's an electronic registry for those, forecasting obligations, which will be detailed later. So yeah, these would be the four major characters or the challenges that we had to face in the past, and which are partly continuously present in our business. There will be five major activities that we or performed service that we present in the country and with the operational maintenance market. The first one I would like to just go in just a little bit of details, not in very deeply, just mentioning the major things to know and not to forget. Since the market is expected to grow, then the maintenance was earlier should be secured by the general contractors or EPC providers, given that they had a warranty obligation. There are likely some expectations, but we can state that the lack of resources, which I have mentioned earlier, and actually the situation in the market is that the warranty and the maintenance that is provided by the general contractors just simply doesn't exist. So it's not, anyway, it's not fulfills the expectations of an institutional investor for sure. So therefore, there is a slightly more interest now from smaller local and international service providers like Photon Energy with their own employees covering the whole country and obtaining all the certifications such as the middle voltage switching licenses and substation operations. So we really experience an upcoming interest to such services and service providers that we can fulfill. We have to mention the monitoring, which in Photon it's paired with the operational maintenance. Almost every case we build out a production monitoring system, which is probably known for those who are involved in the industry, but surprisingly, it's not obvious for everyone to need to build. We have our own developed monitoring system through which which our control room is constantly receiving the data. So there is a 24/7 dispatching service which enables on-call technicians to be instantly informed about any failures and act on any issues. So it's, for us, it's obviously a necessary thing. Availability is one of the major topics when making a contract and when talking about the acting for failures and on-call service. It's obvious that ensuring the continuity of the power production is a strong need in order to secure the return on the investment of our own and our third-party clients also. Therefore, we always focus on that, and we undertake different SLAs, service level agreements by different investors and different clients of ours according to their needs. Forecasting was mentioned before, which is in Hungary. It has a real enhanced role in the activities, and this obligation for the regulator we perform with our own resources. This function has an important role since the KAT related power plants for the bonus, and as Georg mentioned, in the future it's going to be the basis of balancing, which is going to be absolutely condition precedent to be able to perform if anyone invests in solar power plants in the country. Since the time is going, but I would not go into details of security or insurance. Just would like to mention that there are various tests and various solutions which are used in the country. We also have different solutions, power plant by power plant, I have to say. And we are collecting the experiences from the heat cameras to the different alarm systems. But the major role of this is to fulfill also the insurance conditions and then the needs of the investor to be secure. About insurance, I would say that the country is quite well provided with insurance companies and covered. Nevertheless, we understand that given that we have a bunch of portfolio all in the surrounding countries, we basically talk to insurers on a group level. So and we are convinced that we can receive actually better conditions than we would go by one power plants. There are a few examples just to close this presentations. I brought you some nice photos which we prepared lately during this summer. These are all Hungarian locations. As you can see, the capacity is 5.5 megawatt peaks, 2.1 megawatt peaks. You can see that these are all built of the KAT, under the KAT regime, and built up more units of half megawatt peak elements, which where I would just highlight that in this case we all have to have a separate company, a separate feeding contract, a separate operational contract, even if these power plants are built in one location and one branch, and also feeding in one through one connection, and that we have to say it gives us a busy period for the future. So seeing these photos, they are quite similar to wherever in the world. Actually, we have to say that in Hungary the technology is still with non-tracking panels. We are starting with the trackers right now. There are not too much experience here locally with that. So fixed panels, fixed inverters, and as close as possible to the feeding locations. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, both George and Joseph, for your presentation. And this leads us to a Q&A session. I have to say we have quite some feedback from our attendees. Let's begin with the questions. First of all, from Luis, 2 questions coming in related to the auctions. First of all, when do we expect, although we briefly touched it, but worth repeating again, where do you believe they're going to be carried out, and who is the regulator going to be for those auctions?
Yes. So the auction is organized by the regulator, MEC, and basically the conditions have already been published on the website, and the submission dates. So the submission window opens on the 4th of November, and the final date of submission is, just a second, I quickly. So submission, the final date of submission is the 5th of December. So it's open from November 4th to December 5th, so for 1 month, and then the NEC will do the evaluation until mid-January, but the results will be announced on the 15th of March.
Okay, thank you very much, George. Let's move on to another very interesting question. Here an attendee asks us, if we have a 500 kilowatt METAR projects which are next to each other, are they de facto considered as one power plant, or are they separate projects under the METAR scheme?
Technically they're considered separate. However, there are limitations, and it's slightly different, and that's one of the major differences to the KAT, that one investor is not allowed to have 2 METAR projects, or own 2 METAR projects that are located next to each other. So if the ultimate beneficial owner, and at the recent event, the regulator has reiterated that they will be checking this. Of course, the question is how far up, an ownership chain, and particularly if it's outside Hungary, they can really go. But at least they have indicated that they will be checking this very closely. So the law says that 2 projects or 2 plants benefiting from the METAR scheme that are located right next to each other may not be owned by the same owner. ultimate beneficial owner. So you can, so one owner, one investor can own many different plants, but they must not be next to each other.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Maybe this is a question coming in more from a financing aspect. When it comes to financing KAT and METAR projects, do you feel there is a difference in the approach from on banks' behalf? What do you notice?
Yes, 100% for sure. So KAT, as I mentioned at the beginning, is a system that has been in place for a long period of time. So banks have been financing projects based on this support scheme for over 10 years. So banks are very familiar with this. I mean, as I mentioned, over the years, different types of sources and projects have been funded. So some time ago, wind. Now it's solar. But basically, the banks are very familiar with this, and of course, not all Hungarian banks finance KAT-based solar projects, but many of them do, and it's something that they have very good knowledge of. What we've seen is different approaches. So some banks were very happy to finance the smaller KAT projects, even if they were next to each other, which is allowed based on the KAT system. But then some banks took an approach that they only wanted to finance large projects. Here, I would like to insert that there's been a relatively small number of KAT licenses also issued in the past have bigger capacity than 500 kilowatts. So there were a few that were up to 20 megawatts and something in between as well. So there are some banks that focused on these type of projects. METAR, in comparison, is something where, and he would say we have also acquired a couple of METAR projects. So we are actually talking to banks, and we are seeing that they're only now, some of them are in the process of properly studying the system and getting comfortable with that. But my expectation is that I mean, we are already seeing with 2 or 3 banks that they are getting more familiar, that they are interested in looking at those projects, and some of them may send us term sheets within the next couple of weeks. So if I had to guess, I would say early next year we may see a significant increase in the bankability of METAR projects, as more banks will be standing ready to finance. But many of them are still busy financing the KAT projects, and this is why the incentive to study the METAR system has been rather muted. But I think next year we'll see an improvement, and they will be bankable for sure.
Thank you, George. Thank you, George. We also have a question popping up directly for Josef. This is very specific to the Hungarian market. When it comes to the type of panels, in your opinion, do monocrystal or polycrystal perform better? Which one would you go for?
Well, definitely mono, but I think it's not so obvious to take the standpoint. For my own perspective, it's mono.
Mono. Thank you. Okay, so we got a clear answer.
If I may jump into this, I mean, first of all, let's for many this is a religious question, whether mono or poly. But I would like to add, I mean, we are looking at the Hungarian market also from through the lens of or the eye of an investor, as we are investing in plants the long term. And for us, it has always been so we strongly prefer mono, because over 25 years the production volume is bigger. But of course, at the same time, we're looking at the differences in investment cost. And now with the price gap between mono and poly narrowing, I mean, we are for sure from now on going to build everything in Hungary on mono panels.
Sure. Clear and concise answer, very much indeed. Moving on, what is the current price of produced electricity power at the current state?
What is it's a very difficult, the way it's phrased, it's a very difficult question to answer. So Are we talking about the market price on the electricity market?
Yes,
or
yes, definitely looking up at the market price currently.
Okay, so the electricity market, and here I have to admit that it's given the fact that we are building on the basis of feed-in tariffs, it's not a price that we watch every day too closely, but I mean, electricity market prices in Hungary are somewhat above the level that what you would see, for example, in some of the Western European markets. So we are somewhere between 50 and 55 euros on average per megawatt hour. So in other words, the feed-in tariff of 100 euros is a premium against the market price, but it's of course not the multiples that we have seen in the past, where feed-in tariffs were a massive multiple of market prices.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Let's also get a bit more technical, get a bit deeper. When we spoke earlier about obligatory forecasting, question coming up is, what exactly does obligatory forecasting entail? And specifically, what does it entail on the business model side?
Joseph, do you want to answer that, or should I?
Well, on the terms of this forecasting, we have to. Well, let's go through it. There are 4 different types of forecasting. If this is the question is corresponding to, there is a daily ahead forecasting which has to be performed by 10 o'clock of the subject day for the subsequent day. There is a possibility for another modification of forecasting, like an intraday way, when you have some difficulties and differences in the meantime that you recognize, and then you can correct your forecasted daily production. And there is a continuous, frequent forecast which has to be uploaded for the forthcoming month and for the forthcoming full year. That's the 4th type on a monthly basis, which has to be updated each month, so that there is a month ahead and there is a year ahead forecasting. So it gives a certain challenge, and in terms of resources, depending on the size of your portfolio, it gives rather an IT challenge to perform.
Thank you, Joseph. And George, question specifically addressed to you. So assuming we are taking this KAT support scheme in place, the question coming up is, do you believe there are still investment opportunities for new investors, so for new players in the market, with the KAT support mechanism?
That's a very good question and a very tricky one to answer. I mean, of course, these projects, the licenses are not being issued anymore, as mentioned earlier. So it's only possible to acquire projects that have those licenses, that have successfully twice extended their COD date, and there is still probably several hundred of those projects out there that have not been built. I mean, it's no secret that we're also in the market trying to buy those projects. We're not the only ones, so the prices of these KAT projects is going up. It is quite difficult to find those projects, but they are popping up here and there. Over the next 2 years, until the last COD date of most of the projects, all the projects, we believe projects will come out, in the sense that investors who have bought them or developers who want to build them themselves will come to the conclusion it's better to sell them. Prices have gone up, to be specific. I mean, I don't know, 2 years ago, it was possible to buy projects for well below 100,000 euros, so 70, 80,000. Now prices start at 130, but we even hear prices up to 200,000 euros per project, so not per megawatt, but per project. Then of course it depends on the investment cost. It's still possible to generate what I would believe to be an attractive return, but there is a finite number, and the prices are definitely going up. And last but not least, I would say it is definitely necessary to have really good and focused due diligence done on those projects, because at the end of the day, you're buying companies, SPVs. From what you've seen, many of them sometimes have history, so they're not actually even clean, or they've been spun off from companies. So it's important to have really good legal DD of the project companies themselves. Of course, all the permits, all the technical DD, in particular with respect to the grid connection and the grid connection solutions. Sometimes there can be negative surprises in additional capex needs. So it is something where definitely it's a discipline acquiring those projects, that just finding the projects and then transacting the acquisition is not for everyone. So somebody coming new into the market, I would say it's probably worth doing, but I believe that maybe the easier entrance point at this point in time may be actually some METAR projects, and then the options, which I think will provide significant opportunities over the next couple of years.
Gentlemen, and let's wrap up this Q&A. Fortunately, we have a lot of questions coming in, but we will have to keep some in standby. Our attendees will understand also time concerns, but this is going to be a $1 million question when, assuming we do this webinar again in 5 years. Where do you both see the Hungarian market? Quick overview, quick thoughts on your behalf. What can you tell us?
In 5 years, I would say we'll see I don't know, maybe somewhere between 3 and 5 gigawatts installed. I think there will be quite a lively market in terms of installations on commercial buildings, also some based on PPAs or even some behind the meter situations. I think there will be a lot of installed solar capacity in Hungary, both utility scale, but also for end user consumption. So I think it will be the market will be significantly larger than what it is today, and I think there's a lot of opportunity given the size of the country.
So that sounds like an open invitation to come and actually invest in Hungary, and that leaves us with the Q&A session. So thanks, of course, to all our attendees for asking these questions. Thank you for joining. Before leaving this webinar, I want to quickly update you where we landed with Solar Plaza, upcoming events. So Solar Asset Management in Europe, in Frankfurt, 2-day event. We're also landing before that, actually, in Dakar, Senegal, with Unlocking Solar Capital, Africa. We're bringing also the Unlocking Solar Capital session to Asia in Singapore by the end of October. So you can join us there. And last but not the least, I would say most important one, the Solar Future Hungary, as we mentioned during the opening. 14th of November, register at our website. You can view the program, view the speakers already coming in. We'll also have the registration for the pre-conference dinner, unique network opportunity, needless to say that. So join, learn. You'll also be able to meet George, Lucas, me personally during the event. So as always, you're welcome to join. And gentlemen, that leaves us with today's webinar. I want to thank you again, George and Joseph, for sharing your thoughts, your knowledge, your ideas. Very, very precious. So thank you once again, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, and of course, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you to our attendees joining. Thank you for the questions. Sorry once again, we are not able to address them all, but as always, your involvement is much appreciated. And see you soon at one of our next events, and hope also to see you in person in Hungary. All the best, and Greetings from Solar Plaza.
Okay.
Muted.